The next speaker, Giath Taha, is an artist whose work is about how aesthetics and politics both shape and are shaped by societal structures. And he's going to talk about two pieces of work connected to the war in Syria and how ambiguity becomes an aesthetic and an emotional experience.
Hello, everyone. I hope you still have some energy after two inspirational talk. And I'm happy to be back here in Ireland for the third time, sorry. And for the third time also, I forgot my my block charger, because you have a different one, guys. So anyone has a charger, please give it to me after the break. My name is Giath Taha, visual artist. And for me, when I was preparing for this talk, I thought I would look through the internet and just gather more information about the exhibition of Maguire, Grande Illusion. So on YouTube, I randomly, I came across an interview. Probably it was about his exhibition in the United States, Without Borders. So in the interview, Brian was like sitting on the couch, and suddenly he stood, and he ran to his painting and started spraying it with water, and then just like touching it a bit. And then he went back, he sat again on the couch, and he said, the job of an artist is finding arguments between spaces. Well, actually, this comment struck me as immediately connected to what Edward Said described as a condition of exile. In his book, Reflection on Exiles, Edward Said explains the exile is both painful and generative. It's a bold statement, you know. It's a state of being caught between two worlds, never fully belonging to one or another. Exile is a loss of home, belonging, rootness. Yet it's also a position of a critical perspective, one that allows exiles, actually, to see both their homeland and a new land in adopted, fresh, critical eyes. Said writes that the exiled person exists in perpetual displacement, always aware of what was lost, but never fully at home in what was gained. But displacement is not just geographical, it's also very visual, it's emotional and intellectual. Said differentiates here between the literal exile, when someone is removed forcibly from his or from her own land, and from the metaphorical exile, when artists and thinkers and intellectuals and even activists challenging the dominant narrative. So the question here is actually, is there a way to represent the space between arguments? Well, perhaps by using an exiled aesthetics. Well, I call it exiled aesthetics now, according to what Said explains. An aesthetics that embraces ambiguity while remaining ethically grounded. An ambiguous aesthetics that can open a space where individuals, despite their personal experience with war or injustice, could always relate to and engage. So briefly, I would love to show two pieces and also two clips. One is like done in 2016. It's called Homage to Aleppo. And the other one is Becoming a Ghost with like 2023. Although they might look different, but both of them are dealing with the same idea of dislocation. And both of them trying to be disconnected from the idea of fixed narratives. So in both, war is neither a past nor a present, personal nor collective. It actually is all of them. So, as an activist, when the Syrian revolution started, and as someone who was born and raised in Syria, with the start of the revolution, the only thing I thought about is how to raise awarenesses of this devastated conflict that started in Syria. And of course, as an artist who was like, I trained to deal with photographs and moving image, the only thing that I managed to do actually is just to hold my camera and just try to show this inequality at some point. And this photo was made in Aleppo, in the old city. And I remember that I think was published by New York Times at some point, and with a description, specific description. But then later on, with the years, the narrative has changed. This was used also to implicate on jihadism, or like even IS, although it's just people of Aleppo, and many of them from Aleppo, and all of them are Syrians, but the content is changed here. And actually, at this point, I was so skeptical about the platform of photography as well, of the medium, the usage of a medium in this case. It felt is not enough to represent a story. So my journey with multidisciplinarity at some point started actually from here, and for two important reasons actually. The limitation of the medium, photography in this case, because war photography, especially in the context of Syria and Middle East in general, and you see it nowadays quite a lot in Gaza, is often felt insufficient, and transforming the full depth of a devastated situation is not accurate 100%. Because a single image, no matter how powerful it might be, the risk of being reduced to a spectacle is always there. Because there is a vulnerability of bodies. They are always in the photo, and always is used in the same content. By integrating another mediums, like literature and history in this case, what we see now, is aimed to expand the narrative beyond the immediate visual impact. Another reason, as I mentioned, is the risk of disinformation. Because once a photograph, nowadays also with the spread of the social media, once a photograph is released in the world, particularly in the realm of social media and the news media, the meaning can be easily manipulated, recontextualized at some point also, or even stripped out of its original meanings. So I found myself out of the control of the thing that I took in the first place. So by combining another medium, it felt as if there was a need to reclaim the narrative again. So the first project was a homage to Aleppo. It's a series of photos that I made from 2012 until 2014 in Aleppo. Actually, the work is based on George Orwell's memoir, Homage to Catalonia. Because for many of us know that George Orwell volunteered as a fighter. He, in the first place, went as a journalist there, or as a journalist, but of course he was heavily involved in fighting on many of the deadlines. And since I'm comparing George Orwell with, so I briefly found this also coincidentally. This is me, and look how I must. It's totally different. I'm pretending to be a journalist here, not like Orwell. So that was interesting, actually, to put the comparison, since I'm also combining his text with the images. So, in the work of George Orwell, Homage to Catalonia, which is a memoir, it details his personal experience fighting in the Spanish Civil War. The words of Orwell wrote almost a century ago describe the mechanism revolutionary of the Republican fighters. And he explained also the revolutionary mechanism that was much common during the Spanish Civil War. By combining both of the photographs, I mean my photographs and his work, his text, the fragments from Orwell's books became a kind, with the combination of the images, it became an ambiguous narrative where text and images refused to settle in one single interpretation. By bringing together photographs, literature, and history, which is really important, the work erases the specificity of time and place, making the war feel less like an event and more like a pattern, a cycle that repeats and keeps repeating across history. As what Said described exile as a condition of being trapped between two worlds, actually Homage to Aleppo, as what I call it, exists in the space between historical memory and contemporary reality. It recognizes war not as a distant, isolated event that occurred in the history, but is something always ongoing.
Good. Something in his face being moved. It was the face of a man who would commit murder and throw away his life for a friend. The kind of the fate you would expect in another. The thing that happened to the speaker was, in fact, not merely a severe war, but the beginning of a revolution. It is this fact that the anti-fascist force outside Spain has made it its special business to achieve. The issue has been narrowed down to fascism versus democracy, and the revolutionary aspects concealed as much as possible. The funded use at this time was a frightful subject known as the FAI count, having been produced by anarchists in the early days of the war. It was on the principle of a milestone, but the lever was held down not by a pen, but by a piece of tape. You broke the tape, and then you got rid of the bomb with utmost possible speed. It was said in these farms that they were impartial. They killed the man they were thrown at, and the man who threw them. Bang! This war, everyone always did miss everyone else, when it was humanly impossible. Glory fall, indeed. In war, all soldiers are Leipzig, at least when it's warm enough. The men who fought at Verdun, at Waterloo, at Flodden, at Senna, every one of them had their lives crawling over his testicles. Under the seeming guise of the street, their many covered flags, they propagate the posters, the throwing ground. There was unmistakable and horrible feelings of political rivalry and hatred. People of all shades of opinion were saying, forebodingly, there is going to be trouble before long. The danger was quite simple and intelligible.
It was a kind of the combination created a kind of an ambiguous language that fits in all times, in a certain way, which somehow has bridged me to create another work that it might look a bit different, but is very much connected. This work based on gaming, online gaming. And why gaming? War and entertainment have been connected from ancient time of conflict to modern war film and video games. The industry of gaming is led by super powerful countries like the US and China, definitely for economical beneficial, but to serve as a soft power tool to influence in shaping narratives. In the Middle East in general, and I'll bring now the Syrian case, in 2018 there was still exists, a game was launched called PUBG, or like as known, a player unknown battleground. This game has become more than just a game. It is a psychological escape. It was a parallel battlefield and sometimes even a distorted reflection of reality. The game, designed as a survival shooter, where 100 players parachute into an island and fight to be the last one standing, eerily mirrors the chaos in any war zone. For example, many Syrian players bring their life experience into the game, using avatars, slogans, and troop formations that echo the military fighting on the ground. Suddenly, the actual conflict is shifted from being actual to be virtual. For many of them, PUBG, this is what the game shortcut called, is not a form of entertainment, but a way to process and to reframe, or even momentarily escape from oppressive condition of their daily lives to a virtual reality that looks very much the same. This draws, actually, this comparison. The first photo, I made in Aleppo in 2014. And the second one in Amsterdam, but basically a screenshot from a video game. Aesthetics-wise, both of them are using the same apparatus, images. And both of them have audience. And both of them producing propaganda, which at some point they might look equal, even from aesthetical wise. Although the fact that someone will get injured is more in the actual case here. But that was a kind of interesting case to start, or case study to think about and dig more in this game. Actually, this also, the parallel of these images made me contemplate whether making a screenshot in a war online game could be considered as making war photography. And here again, the question arises, is there a space between actuality and virtuality? Where is borders? So by attempting to bridge the gap of how we perceive war, borders, geopolitical issue, and diaspora, the space of online gaming, like in this case PUBG, became a field of research. I put my own virtual body into research and started visiting the game on a daily basis. In a way, to try to deconstruct this medium, but at the same time, it was an opportunity to face my previous traumatic experiences of being in a war. Another paradox emerged. While war gamings like PUBG are globally understood and consumed as entertainment, the reality of a war remains deeply misunderstood. By using a familiar visual language like PUBG in this case, the attempt to create an entry point for an experience that many people have never lived through. When I started searching in the game, because it's basically is a shooting video game, the first mechanism that I decided to resist is to carry a weapon in a shooting game. So this is the moment when I entered the game for the first time, and this act of resistance could be, because this is the only way that, actually it was a fragment in the system itself, because what you do, you can switch weapons, but in this moment, there was a chance not to carry a weapon, which a kind of resistance to the authoritarian system, an authoritarian system that in the game, in this example, the designer, because the game made basically for shooting, and the normal act would be reshooting. This is the actual map of the game, which represents 3,600 square kilometers. It's huge. It's a land. It's a land, it's a territory with its own regulations. And surprisingly enough, there were some terminologies, linguistic terminologies, that were developed just in the game. There was, for example, a terminology called kambara in Arabic, but it's not actually in Arabic. What kambara means, when most of the time when the beginner players start playing the game, they try to they try to ambushing people, and they try to hide themselves, and they take the pruning position. And this act started to becoming really famous and be called kambara. And surprisingly enough, that was used also by an Iraqi journalist in one of his articles to explain a behavior of the local government, that they also do the same with some economical procedures. These were the screenshots when I started to do in the game. And I was questioning whether this type, again, could be considered as a photography or not. I always say that I had the best time when I was in Aleppo and the north of Syria making photos, but at the same time witnessing all this heavy implication on a daily basis. Always you think that maybe one time or one day you will get the chance to build a kind of reparative dialogue, that you can go and revisit the past and make something totally different. And this is actually what the game offered me. Making something in a war zone, but is not connected to a war. And again, a huge map and a huge land like this, it became my own mapping of creating my own notes and memoir that's based on the daily interaction with the platform. I took it further to bring actually the immaterial object like this to be more materialized. And I used the technique of cyanotypes by taking these screenshots and deal with one of the oldest techniques in the printing. Is actually, eventually, they are like a virtual reality printed on cyanotypes. Here comes the moment. You can forget everything I said. It took 5 months. All this process of just digging in this platform, carrying all this implication of a word, because it's still a word, especially with someone who has experience with the word. The ghost idea embodies the ghostly state of exile that we mentioned about Said, a liminal existence between two worlds, as what we call it in Arabic, al-barzakh. So ghostliness is like al-barzakhiyya, with someone functioning between two worlds. It hovers between the past and the present, between the past and the present, between the presence and the absence, between life and death, and between what is visible and what is not. And just as a ghost cannot be seen unless one enters its realm, the only way to become a ghost or to meet a ghost is to become one of them. After being in the game for 6 months and with all the stories that I had and gathered, and even I met someone who had almost like lived in the same neighborhood, because you can talk there. I coincidentally knew that my brother, who lives in Syria, he's a commander of a virtual battalion. Now, this is why I said, like, you can leave everything what I said before, all this process of research. And the moment when I knew that my oldest brother, who we shared the same room when we were really little, who we didn't meet all these years, he's a commander of a battalion. So I thought, why not try to meet him? Could this work or not? So the video will show you, it's like 25 minutes, but of course this is not 25 minutes, no worries. It's like, I show you a piece of the meeting point, and then we come back.
ما معي شيء، ما لحق أتجمع شيء.
خليك واقف.
هلا ليك بتطلع أنت على راس التلة. وأنا اللي عم بطرق. أوه ليكو بيان أبو الغوص. والله مزرقين عيوني. عمل لك رقصة تحية. دقيقة في واحد وراك، في واحد. دقيقة وش خالص. طبعا أنا ما فيني شوف نايم يعني ولا هلا شو هذا ريد زون. بعد عنه اللي بنزل قنابل. بنزل هلا شو اسمه. تعال لهون. بس هون ما انت ما بدك تحمل سلاح؟
لا بس شو هذا اللي معك؟
بس مقلاي. هذا معلم روسية، احلى سلاح بالعالم. وفي اس اس.
شو هذا في اس اس؟
في اس اس قناصة بس كثير ضعيف. هذا قصر. ها وين معلم؟ ما في شيء. خلص القصر. شو هلا؟ معلم الروسية شغلة. لاني استاذ تاريخ عم حالي بالروسية. شو الحالي؟
معك انت شيء؟
والله بدك شو؟ ما معي. ما خذ تعال خذ هيك. هون لك لا اسعار. ما اضحك بريك.
وين نروح؟ وين تاخذنا تأجينا وتحطنا على الخريطة؟
لا هون ايوه تعال الله يلعنك ابو شهر خالص. معلم تعال شو ذكرت؟ ذكرت لما كنا هيك بالحارة معلم. وانت كنت ابتدائي وانا بس اخلص منك، بس بدي اخلص منك، بس اهرب. حسيتك مثل التعتولة. والله عن جد رجعتني ذكريات كثير قديمة. ما تتذكر انه انا وياك كنا بنفس المدرسة. انا احس ليش احس انه يا زلمه مسؤول عنك، مع انه يعني هلا انت خبرتك بالحياه وانا خبرتني وخبرتني. انا رايح للمسلاح، عندك مشكله؟
انت لك افكارك وانا لي افكاري. No, we can't stop you. It's okay. It's always difficult to rewatch it again because it always feels real, you know. And this is what's crazy about virtual reality, that the bodily manifestation is different than a Zoom talk or like any other talk. You interact with the bodily manifestation, and you see like dealing with the environment, surrounded environment, and try to find the real intimacy, because the authenticity suddenly is there. You know, like it's not about the game, it's not about the fight. It's about two brothers are just meeting first time, and still until this moment we didn't meet. But what I would love actually to finish this talk, to go back to the whole idea of displacement and the arguments between, or the space between arguments. Actually, where this space belongs, and here this is the question of belonging. Is this space belongs to a specific place or not? And I would love to share a story when, after I did the Homage to Aleppo project, I had a kind of emotional connection to Catalonia as a land, without the possibility to visit Syria, of course. So I'm also really love to walk for long distances. So I decided to walk the whole Pyrenees. And at some moment, before La Vallole was a really tiny village, I stopped by a motorcyclist. I was stopped by a motorcyclist, and first question he asked me, where do you come from? I mean, basically I'm escaping the whole world. I'm walking here, and I don't want to hear this question, you know, because this question always, if you come from a certain region, always layered with this answer of displacement and refugees and jihadism and tourism, and so the name of Syria is enough to let this all flow out. Sorry. So the only thing I said, well, I'm Dutch, and I wasn't lying, and I got a Dutch nationality. And then he insisted. He said, no, where you are originally from. And I said, well, I'm Syrian. And then he opened his eyes, and he asked me to follow him. We went to a building. He showed me that this building was very important in the last days of the the Spanish republics. Because the president, the last president, I think his name's Manuel Azana, he gathered the tracks, and he carried in these tracks, a lot of valuable things from the Spanish heritage, and paintings from La Parado museum, just to transfer them safely to France, because nobody knows what the forces of Franco are going to do with this, because they were 2 days just ahead of this. And then he pointed out to the building, and he told me exactly everything was evacuated here, and then they transferred this through the borders to be safe, and then gave it to the League of Nations at that time. And then he pointed out to a road, and he said, you see this road to La Yancora? It's 500,000 refugees, Spanish refugees, escaped from here to France, exactly like your Aleppo. And then just like, my goodness, this guy knows a lot. And then I asked him about a comment that was on that building called Fisca la Repubblica, I think. I thought, what this means? He said, well, salute to the Republican and to all the rebels and the free people around the world. Well, at that moment, I didn't know what to say, honestly. I was amazed, and I felt as there was no gravity. This guy felt that it belongs to Assyria, to Catalonia. I didn't know to where he was belonged. Or actually, maybe he belongs to the non-belonging. And probably there, or he knew where to find the space between arguments. So thank you for your time.